Our world and beyond. Space, in partnership with the European Space Agency.
After taking part in groundbreaking space simulation, crew members of the Mars 500 can happily report mission accomplished. After a year and a half locked in isolation, the 6 volunteers have made their own giant leap in deep space examination.
On the Mars 500 mission, we have achieved on Earth the longest space voyage ever, so that humankind can one day greet a new dawn on the surface of a distant but reachable planet.
The multicultural crew of 3 Russians, 1 Chinese and 2 Europeans were sealed in their mock spacecraft at the Russian Institute of Biomedical Problems, or IBMP. There they carried out the experiment in cooperation with the European Space Agency.
We'll first present Diego's room. So I guess you saw the Italian flag. Just after you have my room.
Some things were quite uncomfortable. For instance, the bed was very small, and when I laid on my back, it felt like my arm was falling.
This is the zone that communicates the living quarters with the gym. Here we have an airlock through which we pass all the samples to scientists around the world.
Living in such closed quarters meant good housekeeping was paramount. And although the members didn't get to experience space radiation or weightlessness, they provided priceless data on the medical and psychological effects long-term isolation has on a spaceship crew. The culturally diverse group had to avoid conflicts and keep the team spirit up throughout the lengthy and at times stressful mission. Lacking any real-time contact with the rest of the world, they had only themselves to stave off any boredom.
They did exceptionally well. I mean, no real conflict. I think that most people would have expected things like that.
The crew coped with their task not only in normal conditions, but also in emergency situations.
It's 13:23 hours of the 1st of
Phony
December.
emergencies such as a sudden blackout in December left the crew without water, electricity and ventilation for 20 hours.
The crew actually didn't realize that it was a simulation, and it took us a couple of weeks to convince them that this was not for real, it was only an exercise.
Now their isolation is over, the Mars 500 crew members enjoy their first sunrise for 17 months. During the post-mission quarantine, medics and scientists measure the effect the mission has had on the volunteers' physical and mental health. Our film crew gained exclusive access into this aerospace clinic in Moscow, where cosmonauts, jet pilots and submarine crews are put through grueling checkups. The Mars 500 data will be added to more than 100 other international scientific investigations.
Since the focus here is the isolation and confinement aspects of a Mars mission, the focus has been largely on behavioral and performance and psychological function, the functioning of the team, but also the effects of the stress of isolation and the effects that stress has of different physiological function, like the immune function, for example.
So, welcome to the medical module. This is our workplace, and this is a place where I will spend most of my time tomorrow doing some experiments with digestion.
We spent a large share of our time conducting experiments the scientists had planned for us. After we gathered the data, we simply sent it back to them.
Look at Vanya, he's all relaxed. And Sasha, he is doing a test today. He has to blow in some tubes every half an hour. And have this device connected to his chest.
The scientific goal was partly psychological, to see how we could do this, Then a lot of medical things. I mean, I don't think any 6 healthy males have been so well controlled and followed for 1.5 years. I mean, everything they ate exactly we controlled, and then we took hundreds of medical tests all the time, and this will be a scientific gold mine for many years to come.
We need to eat exactly what is written on the menu, so we have to take 20 grams of that, 20 grams of this, and as you can see, the whole module is full.
The problem came from the repetition. We ate the same thing week after week, and sometimes it got a bit difficult, especially when we didn't have specific food from our countries. For example, I really missed having a good croissant on a Sunday morning.
Okay, so this is the way how Diego is making a cocktail.
Now, after 520 days of eating stock supplies, the men took into fresh food. A welcome change. And in the meantime, the search for hazardous after effects continues.
We do an ultrasound image of the blood vessels and heart. The images we see show the vessel wall has a certain thickness. We think this thickness may change eventually with the effects of inactivity and the distress of the flight.
The Mars 500 study is the latest and largest in a long line of isolation tests conducted at the IBMP. In the 60s, a manned mission to Mars was a daring goal for Soviets who were determined to outdo the Americans in the ubiquitous space race. In 1967, 3 researchers were locked in a compact steel chamber for 1 year as guinea pigs for autonomous life support systems. The module measured just 12 square meters, and without any personal space, crew members became increasingly irritated.
For a whole year, we dwelled in that confined space. When 2 people were sitting at the table, the third couldn't make his way past without brushing against someone. As you can imagine, it starts to get on your nerves after a year.
That study was and remains an extraordinary achievement. The experience which was gained from it, as well as other elements of the experiment, were used in the Mars 500 and in real space flights.
But unlike all previous experiments, the Mars 500 study included a simulated descent onto the Martian surface.
Having a big event like this in the middle of the mission has really been something that has lifted up the crew.
The period on the Martian surface was by far the most exciting thing to happen during the entire mission. We divided the crew into 2 groups, and 3 of us went into the landing module and descended to Mars, well, virtually anyway. We used real spacesuits to do 3 EVAs, which means we exited the craft. I was in a spacesuit for 2 of them, and for the other I was the crew communicator.
fatto io la persona che comunicava con loro.
For the imitation landing on the Martian surface, the crew wasn't divided by nationality. The landing team included representatives of China, Russia and Europe. We had absolutely no problems communicating and working together as one team.
The success of the Mars 500 mission was due in large part to the rigorous selection process of the participants. The final 6 were chosen from thousands of applicants for their psychological and professional characteristics. Physical shape and the ability to stay sane throughout the isolation was another must.
We wanted to see if we could increase individuals' strength. At the very least, we didn't want them to lose any muscle or bone strength during the experiment. We used a vibration device to preserve the muscle force. We discovered it had worked when we measured the men jumping on the ground reaction force plate.
These German scientists use a CT scanner to compare the muscle volume and bone condition of the crew members before and after their 520 days in isolation.
The data is still being collected, of course, and the scientists will work for 1 or 2 years analyzing and publishing this data.
The Mars 500 experiment is an important milestone in preparing for a real round trip to our neighbouring planets. And if the spacefaring nations agree to work together, interplanetary journeys could become a reality in just 25 years.
If you asked me, would I do the same simulation again tomorrow, I doubt I would. It meant spending a long time away from my family and from all the things that I love. But if you asked me to go on a mission to Mars, well, there would be no doubt. I would jump at the chance.
I think this trip has been very important for humanity to understand its possibilities and for science to try and answer its questions about Mars. And of course it will be immensely important for the younger generation, who need to understand that they can and should work together. There are goals that unite all those who live on Earth. This is one such goal.
Вот это задача.